It was a night I won't forget, as the events that unfolded still send shivers down my spine. I had been spending time at my boyfriend's place, joining in on a small gathering. We were having drinks, and as we ran out of juice, I offered to make a quick run to the nearby store to replenish our supplies. It was only a 3-minute walk away, and since I was one of the most sober ones there, I didn't mind going alone. I had only consumed one drink and was sipping on a second when I headed out. The walk to the store went smoothly, and I easily found what I needed. As I exited the store, a man in his mid to late 30s caught my attention. He seemed about to enter the store but then hesitated. I continued on my way, paying little mind to it, when suddenly, he called out, "Hey!" I chose to ignore him and kept walking. After all, I hadn't dropped anything, and I had all the items I came for. Besides, it was nearly 3 a.m., and I had no desire for further interactions. To my surprise, the man began following me, closing the distance between us. He uttered, "You're pretty. I need someone like you." Uncomfortable and alarmed, I remained silent, quickening my pace. However, he tapped me on the shoulder and requested my phone number. Firmly, I declined and implored him to leave me alone. Yet, he persisted, insisting that I was beautiful, and attempting to persuade me further. Determined to escape, I increased my speed and decided to cross the street. In a state of concern, I called my boyfriend, informing him about the situation. He immediately asked for a description of the man, and I provided the details while hearing him prepare himself in the background. Concerned for my safety, he instructed me to walk even faster. I was practically running at this point, glancing behind me and discovering that the man continued to pursue me. Then, my boyfriend suddenly appeared before me, and in my haste, I collided with him. When I looked back, the man was no longer in sight. I couldn't fathom whether he had hidden somewhere or simply vanished into thin air. My boyfriend held me tight, seeking reassurance that I was unharmed. I told him I didn't know where the man had gone, and although he offered to investigate, I declined, requesting only to be taken back home. With his arm around me, he guided me back, ensuring my safety. Now, sitting in my boyfriend's room, the terror still lingers within me. He asks if I'm all right, and I reassure him that I am, though I can't help but feel deeply frightened. Encounters like this are unfortunately not new to me, but this incident was particularly horrifying. The fact that the man gestured for me to lower my phone churns my stomach. His words before that gesture, "Don't go calling anyone now," further intensify my unease. Thankfully, my boyfriend's friends inquired about the situation, and their girlfriends came to check on me once they were informed. They are currently present in the room, offering their comfort and support. I can't help but wonder why I repeatedly find myself in such distressing situations. It's an experience I'm utterly tired of enduring. Yesterday, as I was walking home from the store, something unsettling happened that has left me feeling fearful and anxious. I noticed a black box car driving past me at an unusually slow pace, and the man inside the car seemed to be watching me intently. When he passed me, I saw him glancing at me through his rearview mirror. It immediately struck me as odd, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. To assess the situation, I purposely slowed down my pace, pretending to check if the man was simply a slow driver or if he had any ulterior motives. Surprisingly, he continued driving at an unusually slow speed, but he did shift slightly when he noticed 2 guys riding their bikes past him. He then positioned his car near the edge of the short street, as if waiting for something or someone. Feeling uneasy, I decided to play it safe and acted as though I had forgotten something, promptly turning around to get out of his line of sight. With bated breath, I discreetly observed if he had left, cautiously peeking around to confirm my suspicions. Once I was convinced that he was gone, I resumed my walk. However, I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that if I saw that car behind me again, it meant he had circled back. As I continued walking, I made 3 turns, getting closer to my house. But when I glanced back while walking up a small hill, I saw the man standing at the corner I had just turned from. It was a clear sign that he had indeed circled back to find me. He watched me intently as I carried on, only leaving once I had ascended the hill and turned the corner. However, as I neared my house, I saw his car making a turn up the street, positioned directly across from my road, waiting there patiently. In that moment, fear consumed me. Quickly, I took out my phone and called my mom, desperately seeking some form of protection. I altered my path, walking in the opposite direction, and to my relief, the man drove away as soon as he noticed me with my phone in hand. My mom came out to accompany me back to the safety of our house, and for the remainder of the day, I didn't catch sight of the car again. But despite this temporary respite, my mind continues to be plagued by disturbing thoughts. The knowledge that this man now knows the neighborhood I live in has me constantly on edge. I'm haunted by the what-ifs. What if he decides to return? What if I find myself alone once again when he does? What if no one is home to call for help? What if he observes my movements and strikes when I'm the only one at home? The fear has crippled me, leaving me hesitant to venture outside. The mere thought of revealing my home's location to this unknown man terrifies me, especially since I often find myself home alone. I have summer school, which requires me to leave the house, but the fear is so paralyzing that I can't bring myself to step outside. I constantly find myself peering through windows, desperately searching for any sign of him. After all, if he was at the store I visited, he must live somewhere in the vicinity of our neighborhood. This experience has deeply affected me, leaving me feeling vulnerable and apprehensive. The sanctuary of my own home has become a fortress that shields me from the potential dangers lurking outside. For now, all I can do is remain vigilant, take necessary precautions, and hope that this unsettling presence never returns. I have a story that I've never really shared with anyone, but it has been on my mind a lot lately. Back in 2015 to 2016, when I was 18 years old, I used to work at a small cafe inside a car parts factory. It was basically a compact restaurant kitchen and lunchroom for the workers. One day, my best friend and co-worker called me, sounding extremely upset. She had encountered a creepy new temporary worker who made her feel incredibly uncomfortable. He had been asking her personal questions like what car she drove, where she lived, if she was single, had children, and even when she got off work. Understandably, she didn't want to walk out to her car alone, especially considering the circumstances. We were both around the same age, 18, while this guy seemed to be in his mid to late 30s, if not already in his early 40s. Given the situation and the fact that we were in Flint, Michigan, we didn't want to take any chances. I quickly drove to the parking lot, located her car, and parked my car next to hers. She requested a security guard to escort her out. At that moment, we didn't see the guy, but my friend described him to me and the guard, and we hoped that would be the end of it. Someone had already warned him to stay away from her, and we hoped he would comply. Unfortunately, he had yet to meet me. As soon as he approached the register to place his lunch order, I immediately recognized him from my friend's description and sensed the creepy vibes emanating from him. He proceeded to subject me to the same intense questioning he had inflicted on my friend. However, instead of telling him off or calling security right away, I decided to employ a different strategy. I lied to him. I fed him a bunch of fabricated information. I told him I drove a blue 2012 Honda Civic, which I knew belonged to one of the second shift managers, always parked near the front of the building. I also informed him that my shift ended around 9:30 p.m., conveniently coinciding with my usual cigarette break time. When 9:30 p.m. rolled around later that night, I stepped outside for my smoke break. As expected, there he was in the parking lot, exactly where I anticipated, near the area where the Honda Civic was parked. He paced back and forth behind two vehicles a few spaces down in the same row, engrossed in his phone. At one point, he glanced up and caught sight of me staring at him. I had my big leather winter coat and a hat on, so I wasn't sure if he recognized me from a distance or not. After finishing my cigarette, I returned inside and promptly explained the entire situation to the security guards. One of them happened to be the same guard who had escorted my friend a couple of days earlier. They found the situation quite amusing and commended me for outsmarting the creep and catching him in the act. I'm not exactly sure what actions they took, as I had to resume my work, but I do know that they immediately confronted him in the parking lot, resulting in his termination later that week. To this day, I remain uncertain about his intentions, but it doesn't take a genius to realize they couldn't have been anything good. The moral of the story is always to have your friends' backs and trust your instincts. If we hadn't intervened, who knows what could have happened, being cornered in a parking lot, potentially facing an attack or abduction from a creepy individual who crossed too many boundaries. I must add an important detail that I neglected to mention initially, after we were informed of the guys. During my freshman year of high school, I came across a guy who caught my attention in the gym. He was engaged in conversation with my ex, but something seemed off. I approached him and suggested we walk laps together, and he gladly agreed. Almost immediately, he began speaking negatively about my ex. I brushed it off, considering my ex's behavior, and we continued to flirt over the next few days. Encouraged by the connection, I eventually mustered the courage to ask him out, and he accepted. The initial months of our relationship went smoothly, although there were a few instances where he exhibited rude behavior towards teachers and fellow students. I chose to overlook it. He frequently complained about his home situation, so when his family struggled with bills, I took it upon myself to raise money to help them. Surprisingly, he seemed indifferent to my efforts. However, as time went on, he started treating me as if I were foolish. I decided to give him a month to improve his behavior. The final straw came when he displayed complete apathy towards my grandmother's passing, and then had the audacity to get angry at me for being upset. A week later, I made the difficult decision to end our relationship. That's when things took a disturbing turn. Without informing my family, he showed up at my house demanding a hoodie I had previously told him I couldn't locate due to my mom's stress-induced cleaning spree. My dad gave him the same response. He became furious, blaming me for not responding to his text. He even accused me of cheating, mistreating him, and publicly body-shaming me. It was then that a memory resurfaced, him mentioning our very first encounter. I hadn't remembered, but he certainly did. It dawned on me that he had spent an entire summer crafting a personality that he thought would appeal to me. He had gone to great lengths to learn about my interests through mutual friends and adopted a persona accordingly. But what truly shook me to the core was when he confessed to my friend that he felt no empathy towards anyone. I had been in a relationship with this person for 7 months. I had stayed at his house and even shared a room with him. Yet, beneath the surface, there was a calculated and manipulative individual who had deceived me from the very beginning. It was a painful realization, but it served as a crucial lesson in recognizing the signs of deceit and guarding my own well-being. I recently had a memory resurface, one that I had to confirm with my mother to make sure it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Unfortunately, she validated the memory, and it sent shivers down my spine. The memory was triggered by a stranger I saw outside my workplace. Although they were harmless, their face reminded me of something long forgotten, something from my early childhood when we lived in our first house. We moved out of that house when I was just 6 years old. As I grew old enough to take my first steps, a fence was erected around our property. Looking back, I now understand why my parents were always cautious about letting me play outside in that neighborhood, although I resented it at the time. It turns out that a few houses down from ours lived a registered sex offender. His presence was made known to the neighbors through a notification from his social worker when he moved in. This man had a knack for engaging in strange and unsettling behavior around the neighborhood. On one occasion, he sprinted across the street and left a massive dent in our neighbor's garage door. Another time, he entered another neighbor's house through the back door, visibly trembling, and pleaded to be held by her. She promptly kicked him out and alerted the police after discovering that he had an erection. Upon confirming my recollections with my mother, I decided to do some research and discovered more about this man by searching his name. I even stumbled upon his Facebook page, which included a photo of him. Any lingering doubts I had were instantly dispelled when I saw his face, clear as day, the same man I remembered. Even viewing his image on a screen made me feel nauseous. According to my memory, I was sitting in our living room, engrossed in watching TV when I felt an eerie sensation of being watched. Despite it being the middle of the day, I turned to look out the front windows and came face to face with the man. His face and hands pressed against the glass. It was the same man I had seen on his Facebook page. He had a huge grin on his face, with eyes that seemed alarmingly wide. The next thing I recall is being swiftly lifted into someone's arms and carried away to another room. My mother confirmed that it was my grandmother who had rescued me, as she was babysitting me at the time. Looking back, I'm grateful that we moved away from that neighborhood. The thought of what could have happened if we had stayed sends chills down my spine.